You absolutely will see those you want to see. And there's going to be surprises because, if you think back, you may have a grandmother that you never met, but you've just been cherished by her, and she's going to be there too, right? And then it gets even more complicated because it's like, okay, but if we live multiple lifetimes, are they showing up as the grandmother I remembered now, or are they showing up as the grandmother from, the 1800s? Or they show up as we most remember them. My name is Lisa Noland-Shalosky. I'm a psychic medium. I'm a trance channel, certified spiritual hypnotist, and I'm also a master teacher with the Lisa Williams School. I had a fantastic upbringing. My parents are still alive. I grew up in a very small town that had one stoplight, and grew up a Baptist. My dad was a deacon in the church, so we were always in church every Wednesday, every Sunday. Potlucks were always at our home. Having that Baptist faith was such an incredible foundation. And I wish I had one of these fabulous stories where I could say I've been seeing and sensing spirit since I was a kid. I don't have that. When I was probably around 19 years of age was my first spiritual experience that I can recall and would really say it's a spiritual experience. I lived with a girlfriend of mine, and I had a boyfriend that was in a band, and he had a key to the apartment, and he would do his gigs. And then when he came home, he would just let himself in and come up to the room. And I remember one night waking up, and I remember seeing him leaning over the edge of the waterbed. And I remember speaking out loud, like, "What are you doing? Why don't you just come to bed?" And then it hit me. I was like, okay, wait a minute. That isn't a real person. Freaked me the heck out. And I remember telling my roommate the next day, and she's like, "Oh, that was just probably my dad." That was really kind of my first experience with, like, you could see ghosts and you could have experiences with ghosts, because again, you have to remember, I grew up a Baptist, so I never had any of that stuff. So she's the person that took me to my first psychic. So I'm about 20 years old when I had my first psychic experience. And she's the one who took me to my first ever psychic fair. And I can remember, as I tell the story, it just makes me giggle to this day. There was a gentleman there. He would take you through like this half-hour past life experience. Didn't even know anything existed like that. Didn't know you could do anything like that. So I put the earbuds on, and we're sitting at a table, right? Just nice and comfortable. You're supposed to sit like this. And I can remember being lifted up, floating across the clouds, and then as he, through the guided meditation, drops you down, you dropped down to wherever this past life was. And I dropped down into this beautiful field, and I was a little Indian boy, and I was just running around and just having a really good time. True story. By the time he brought everybody back, I was laying face down on the table in a pool of my own drool. I was like, oh, but I still, I'm just like, nobody else was like that. But I was like, oh, well, I don't know how abnormal that was, but, so she was the one that always just kind of like, it was always on the fringe though, right? So I was very Baptist in my formative years. Come into my, 19, 20, 21, I'm really into that, going the complete opposite, dating a guy in a band and doing all this crazy stuff. And then I reconnected into my spiritual faith in my late 20s, going into my early 30s. So I'm really deep back in my faith, meet my first husband, we're married, and I'm about 36 by this time. Things aren't working out in my marriage, but I'm still with him. And the little town that I grew up in is Dresden. And the neighboring town is Trinway. And that town has a house called Prospect Place. And they were having a Civil War reenactment on the property. And my sister and I and my dad and my niece and several of us go. And they had a sign in the yard that said that they were going to be doing a ghost hunt that night. And my sister's like, oh, we got to go. They're going to be stirring up all these ghosts. It's going to be great. So we did. So about 10 o'clock that night, we go back. And one of the gentlemen that was running the tour was someone I had gone to school with. So it's right. It's where I grew up. It's, it's going to be great. So they turn all the lights off in this house, and you're just walking around the house with your flashlights, just looking to be scared, okay? And the third level of this house is called their ballroom. So you go in, and it's like a horseshoe shape. And it's about 10:30 at night, and he's got the whole group up there. There's probably 20 of us up there. And he says, this is a really fun place. He goes, the children really like to play up here. And we're like, okay, I'm thinking children. We're just all adults here. What's he talking about, children? So he goes, well, this is what they like to do. They like to play with this ball. So he takes this red ball and he rolls it, hits it on the end of the wall. And as it's rolling back, it stops, makes a 90-degree turn, and rolls and stops at the feet of the person standing next to me. And I remember looking at my sister going, like, what are we doing here? Like, what the heck? Like, there had to be strings. There has to be something, right? I go back to work and I'm telling some friends about it. And they're like, oh, come on. I'm like, no, really, no. You want to know? I'll take you back. I reach out to the guy. I scheduled a private tour for me and 18 of my closest friends from work. We go back. Again, a whole series of just crazy things happening. This time I come back to work, and a friend that hadn't gone says to me, well, you know why these things are happening? I was like, I don't have a clue. He goes, well, you're a medium. And I says, well, no, you're talking about this shirt's an extra large. I'm more a medium since high school. He goes, no, well, you see dead people. And I'm like, no. But that's literally how this all started. After that night, the gentleman that I'm telling you about later became my mentor. His name is Mike. And he, in my adult life, that all happened in like July, August. And then October was a psychic fair up here in Columbus. And he's like, well, let's go to this psychic fair. He goes, and his guidance to me was just walk around, feel out the different people that are at their booths, see who you might want to walk up to and talk to. So I was really drawn to this woman who was at a Pranic healing booth. And I don't know if you've heard of Pranic healing, but it's an incredible energy healing modality. And I was really drawn to her and got to talking to her. And there was a book, talking about how your hands can heal. And this was all, again, just all new to me. Didn't know what chakras were. I didn't know what anything was. So she was going to be doing a talk on her energy healing modality at like 1 o'clock that afternoon. So we go to her talk. We're sitting 3/4 of the way back in the audience. And she asked for someone to come up because she's going to do a healing for them in the room. And this person happened to have a problem with their shoulder. And with my physical eyes, as she was holding her hand up, she wasn't touching him, but she was maybe like, 3-4 inches away from him. I could literally see with my physical eyes, 3/4 of the way back in the room, bubbles coming out of her hand and disappearing into her body. And I remember drawing it on the paper that I had picked up at the front, leaning it over and showing my friend, like, what the heck am I seeing? He's like, I'll tell you later. Because this was also new to me. And so he described it as energy. I was actually seeing the energy. And I was like, okay, well, that was really crazy because that's a first, right? All these things are a first. And when they happen, it's like a kid at Christmas. It's like, you get so excited. You want to know more. I want to know more. And I ended up taking her class that following January. And this is a funny story. 2-day class. I went all the way up to Cleveland to take this class from her. It was Introduction to Pranic Healing. And it wasn't until the second half of the second day that I could actually feel energy. And I could only feel it in the tip of my middle finger. And I was in the back of the room and I was kind of flipping her off like, I could feel the energy. And she's like, it's okay, Lisa. She goes like, it's all good. You don't have to like flip me off. And then from there, I just took every class I could take from them. Pranic Healing 1, 2, 3, psychotherapy. I did their, arhatic yoga. I just dove, man. I dove into anything and everything I could find for about a year. And my friend was like, Lisa, you're wasting so much money. You're never going to remember all of this. I'm like, it's not about wasting the money. I just want the experience, and what I remember. And I can always go back. And I can always look at all the books that I've bought, because no matter where I went, I bought every book. I bought everything I could find, because I couldn't get enough. And wasn't but a couple months later, I ended up filing for divorce from my first husband, because I was starting to grow and expand and find all these like amazing things about life, and he just didn't want anything to do with it. So, and then a year and a half. This is a very interesting story. So your question to me was, when did I first start hearing voices? It all started all around that same time, you know. It does scare me to see them in the physical sense, and I've told them I don't want to see them in that way, although it happens. If you want, I can share a couple stories of really profound things that happened. So I divorced my husband. I moved back in with my parents. I'm about 37, 38 years of age, somewhere around in there, living in their walkout basement, you know. And but I was still working in Columbus, and I would just make the drive every day. So one night, I woke up with my big toe just hurting so bad. Like, I was like, oh my God, what in the world? And my covers had been pulled off of me. And I thought, but I wrestle and toss a lot, so that didn't really bother me. But I thought, man, maybe I got a hangnail, or maybe I hung my toe up in the cloth of the material or something. So I get up, I go to the bathroom, everything's fine, and the pain just dissipated. So I lay back down, and I lay my head on the pillow, and then all of a sudden I see this woman lean over, and she's literally like this close to my face. And she starts, and I'm not going to say the gentleman's full name, but she says, you tell Willie that we're all good. He needs to get over it, and we're all fine. Get on with his life. I was like, you know, and I'm like, I just come back from the bathroom. I just got this weird experience with my toe, and I was like, what? Okay, I'll tell him. And then she says it again. She's like, you need to tell him we're all good. He needs to get over it and get on with his life. And I was like, okay, I'm going to tell him. And finally I had to say to her, if you don't leave me alone, I ain't saying crap to anybody, right? Because by this time I was getting a little bit irritated. So finally she leaves, and all of a sudden I had this incessant need. This is like 2:00 in the morning. I had this incessant need to get up and go eat cookies and drink milk. And I had made cookies for my dad the night before, and I laid there thinking, I'm not doing this. I'm not getting up and eating cookies, because, you know, I've already got a, you know, I just don't want cookies right now, you know. Fast forward to the next day. Next day is a Monday. It's 5:00. My shift is over, but I was notorious for always working late. And I remember talking to my boss, because she was very open to this stuff as well. She's very open, and she's just a very dear friend. And I remember telling her about it, and I said, so do you think I should? Do you think I should like reach out to him? She's like, what harm is there? She goes, you don't have to tell him what you want. You can just say, hey, are you open to receiving a message? And the part of the story I forgot to tell you was she gave me her name. She goes, you know, Rosa. So I called him up and I said, hey, I have a weird question to ask you. I said, do you know anybody named Rosa? He goes, well, yeah. He goes, my buddy's mom's name's Rosa. And I said, is she deceased? He goes, no. A real super nice lady. I was like, no. I said, Willie, I'm looking for someone that's deceased. That would be a name that you would know, named Rosa. He says, well, yeah. He goes, my grandma's name's Rosa. I was like, okay. I said, I have something very strange to tell you, and I hope you don't think I'm crazy. I said, but your grandmother came to me last night, and she wanted me to tell you that you need to get over it. They're all fine, and get on with your life. And that was it. That was the message. And his response to me on the other end was, hell no. He goes, you aren't going to believe this, Lisa. He goes, today is the anniversary of my dad's death. And that was his mother, you know, that would have been his mother's, you know, his grandmother. And he goes, I've been I've been like thinking about them nonstop and just, really depressed and just not being able to move on because he had just lost his dad not too long prior to that. And I said, well, obviously the message is you need to get over it. They're all good and get on with your life. He's like, I can't thank you enough. And I said, but can I ask you a silly question? I said, it's the strangest thing. I said, but I woke up because my toe was hurting me really bad and my covers had been pulled down. Again, the response from the other end of the phone was, oh, hell no. And I'm like, okay, well, what does this mean to you? And he goes, Lisa, that's how my grandma used to wake us up as kids. He goes, she would pull our covers off and she would pinch our big toes until we got out of bed. And I said, okay. I said, I'm going to go one step further and ask you something else crazy. I said, was it known for your grandmother to get up in the middle of the night and eat cookies and milk? He goes, all the time. He goes, she would make them and hide them from us kids, and then she would get up in the middle of the night and she would eat and drink her milk. By the time I hung up the phone with him, I was like, I don't even know what's going on with my life. I don't even know what's going on, But that was something very profound that you don't tell a lot of people because it's like they're going to look at you kind of like, but that's been my life. I told them then, I do not want to see you. I'm going to, no, it scares me. It just does. It just makes me like, nope, don't want to see you. I have, but it's pretty rare. But they will show up that way, but I choose not to see them that way. It's all in my mind. It all shows up. The best way I can describe that, the way they communicate for me is I'm very visual. They show me like a movie I've watched or places I've been, experiences I've had, shows I've watched, interviews I've listened to. Everything matters. I pay attention to everything now because there's something always relative, especially when a client is coming. It without fail. There's some way to be able to give that message through. One of my favorite ones that's popping in that I like to always share about how they can get messages through to us. Had a young lady here, and she was with a friend, and her mother had passed. All I kept seeing was a rubber ducky. And I was thinking to myself, good Lord, seriously right now, like rubber ducky, what in the world is that, right? But I have been taught, you see it, you say it. You don't try to figure it out yourself. You just move it back out into the energy of the client and see, how they may make that connection. So I said, all of a sudden, I said, your mother's just, all she's showing me is a rubber ducky, and she's just giggling under her breath. What does this have to do with you guys? They both lost it. And they later sent me a photo because this woman loved rubber duckies. Her entire bathroom had been decorated in them. And the young lady that was with the daughter was like a surrogate child, if you will, because they had been best friends for years. The one thing she got from her was a toilet brush holder in the shape of a rubber ducky. And it was like this running joke that was something that she got as a memory of this woman. So had I been in my head and thought, I can't just say rubber ducky, I can't just say that, but that's how it comes. It comes in visions, or it comes in feelings, or I'll just get a sense that this is correct. It has to come through organic for me. So the psychic part about what I do is talking about love, life, career, children, moving changes, finances, those kinds, legal matters, those kinds of things. And for me, I can't speak for any other medium or any other psychic, but for me, my foundation of pranic healing taught me how to sense and feel energy. I mean, it's just, that's my thing. So, I can tell when I'm speaking truth, or if I'm speaking truth about what the person's trying to say, what Spirit's trying to say. And if I'm not saying it right, I can feel it. And I'll say, okay, give me a second. I'm not getting this quite right, or I'm not saying it quite right, because I can feel it. And it's the best way I can describe it is if I'm fully in that energy and I'm fully communicating clearly for them, it like locks in, almost like a key and an ignition. It just turns on. It's just starting the dialogue, right? I just start the dialogue with the person who has come, to whether it's for a psychic reading or for a mediumship reading. And then all of a sudden, the energy starts flowing to me. And I'm able to tell people about their past and how many children they have, or if they've been married before, if there's been miscarriages, it's just a whole bunch of things. But it just it's almost like things just, it's like flashcards, right? They'll just kind of flash in front of me, and then it's like, okay, got that, okay, got that, okay, got that. Spirit, when I'm communicating for spirit, they will come in on my right. But then I organize them. I say, okay, if you're on dad's side, then I want you standing to my left. Or if you're on mom's side, you stand to my right. If you aren't the actual mother or father, up a little bit becomes the grandparents. And then I got into a conundrum with where do I put step people? Because I had a stepfather come through one time, but he wasn't going to any of the places I had instructed them to go. So then I put step parents above my head. Pets come in, I need them low because that's how I would pet my dog. So often I will see the animals come in around my feet. It's evolved though. So it's not something where you just kind of start out of the gate and this is how it works for you. But it's like every single time. And like I was telling you off camera that I just had this new experience just a couple days ago when I was working with a young man who unfortunately has been killed. He pulled me up into a realm of spirit I've never been to before. And I was in that posture of, okay, I got to stay cool because I'm working with someone. But at the same time, I'm talking to this kid going, where did you just take me? Where am I? It was so exciting. So I'm evolving. Every person I meet helps me evolve. Every spirit I communicate for helps me evolve. So this isn't something that it's just like a plateau and then you get there. This is an ever evolving thing, and you just get better and better at sensing and feeling and knowing how those messages are supposed to come through. Every single person on this planet has this gift, and I am 100%. Every single student has come through my classes, has done what I do. And I had dinner with a few of them last night, and I've nurtured them to the point where now they are starting their own thing, right? So I've got several people that have launched in their own way. It's just, and I actually have one client that came to me a few weeks ago, and she said, Lisa, she goes, I took your class, and she scared me to death. She goes, I did it. I connected this person to their loved one, and she goes, I don't want to do it anymore. She goes, I've told them no, and that's okay. But at least it's just about surrendering and allowing. And, where's your belief system? Because for someone like me, if you told me I was a medium, there was no, the dots didn't connect for me because I wasn't in that realm at all growing up. I just think it's so important that people understand that this is a gift everybody can tap into, and you can use it for the good. I mean, something as simple as finding a parking spot to, communicating with a loved one and knowing that, they're safe and they're amazing and they can help guide you. There's just so many ways these messages just come through. Comes through numbers, comes through finding feathers where there shouldn't be, or, it could be that, every single time I drive to my parents, I'm seeing hawk. Every single time. And there for years this happened. Every time I got on the road to get on the exit to get on the freeway, a red bird would swoop in front of my car. Always very profound things. But I look for things. I'm open to what those messages might be. Someone else might be walking along and seeing the hawk and not even paying attention. It's like, oh, there's a hawk, But I know that that's something profound because it just hits me, it hits my energy field, and I know pay attention. So I can teach anybody how to understand how that energy hits their field and what it feels like and how to know the difference. And when I teach my classes, one of my favorite things to do is to teach this aspect. And I get dowsing rods out and I show them just through breath how they can expand or contract their energy field. And just to see, I mean, that's one of my favorite things to do is teach. Love, love, love teaching, because I get to see people wake up and come into their power the way someone taught me. So I'm just giving back. It's giving yourself this space to empty the mind, right? So it makes me giggle because, again, I go back to when I was first taking Pranic healing. They were offering I think it was once a month. There was a certain Monday that they were offering like free sessions, and it was at the church down on North Broadway. And so I would go down and I would volunteer and I would offer these free services. But prior to that, she had all the practitioners come in and we would do this beautiful meditation. And so here's me, you know, she's guiding this beautiful meditation. And I'm like, you know, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't quiet my mind to save my life. And I would hear these people go, oh my God, there's all these beautiful colors and all this. And I'm like, I ain't getting it. I mean, I'm literally so when I say, Spirit, I need you to throw me a brick, make it a bigger brick. Okay, make it like a big, big, big boulder. How about a boulder? Okay, because the brick isn't working. I mean, I need big, 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 big signs. So I've come a long, 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 long way, right? So I always tell people as I'm teaching, do as I say, not as I did. Because I feel like I did it the hard way, but perhaps it maybe still was anchored in my belief systems that I shouldn't be able to do this, or this shouldn't be happening. So quieting the mind, finding a way to quiet the mind. I'm not a meditator, okay? I'm telling you to do it, but I'm not a good meditator. I don't like having to sit in the posture of, for an hour or something like that. I'm just not going to do it. I just know me. I'm not disciplined in that way. But something with the breath. So there's this really powerful breath work that was taught to me a few years ago where you just close your eyes. And the reason we close our eyes is it tells the mind, you tell the monkey mind, your job right now is simply to focus on my breath. So that's what the monkey mind does. It goes, oh, okay, you got to give it a job. Right? So its job is to focus on the breath. So you close your eyes, you take a breath in through your nose, you hold, and then you release through slightly parted lips at the same pace, 3 breath cycles. Then you slow the breath down a little more, and you do it for 3 more. And then you slow the breath down a little more. So after that 9th breath, all of a sudden you can feel your mind kind of like moving down and kind of like settling into that heart center. And then it's from there you can make decisions and you can check in with yourself. But checking in up here, it's always going to be like Chaos City, right? It's just going to be like Chuck E. Cheese, and you can't make sense of anything, and everything's just chaotic because there's a bunch of kids running around screaming. That's what my head does. But if I just slow my breath down and just take a couple of minutes to do that, that's my entire meditation. And then all of a sudden, I'm coming from that field of the heart, and I can really feel into the truth. And so for me, it is really super important to honor yourself, right? And of course, they say, drinking lots of water and eating healthy. But listen, I still drink. I eat meat. I'm not one of these people that. So here's my thought on all of that, right? If your belief is you can't drink alcohol because it does something to your energy system, then energy follows thought. Okay? If your belief is you can't eat meat, then your body's going to react to the fact that you're eating meat. So I've never really bought into any of those have to fast or have to be a vegan or have to be any of those things. And, I can remember years ago when I was going through my divorce, I was on some antidepressants. And I remember taking a class from a woman named Rosemary Altea. She's a fabulous lady. She was from England. And I remember asking her, is this going to affect my ability to be able to communicate? And she says, not at all, right? They just go around it, So, back to your question, what can you do? It's just quiet the mind. Find ways to quiet the mind. Find ways to disconnect. Find ways to just, maybe it's writing. Maybe you just like writing. Or music that doesn't have any words is really profound for me. So listening to like the music, the frequency of the hertz, I think it's like 528 or, some of those ones just, and not all of them resonate with me, but I'll just bounce around until I find one that just feels like, oh, okay, it hits a chord within you and there's just this resonance. You're like, okay, that just makes me feel very peaceful. Walking in nature, for me, it's gathering sticks and stones. And I look this way at my husband because that's just my thing. And I'll hold stones or I'll hold rocks and just really just like ground myself and just, so I know me, if there's too many steps, I'm not going to do it. Or if it takes too long, forget it. You've already lost me. I need quick. I need to just be able to make it simple. And that's what I tell people. This does not have to be hard. This does not have to be hard. It's just setting intentions. It's about paying attention to the words that you're speaking about yourself, to other people, or what you're saying. Because, energy's everywhere. Energy is everything. When I was still working in corporate America, I was in HR and I was responsible for doing our parties. And I had hired a psychic and she was a palm reader. And I always got the readings. If I booked them, I was getting one, right? Because I was still not doing this professionally for myself necessarily. I dabbled, but I was still in corporate America, but I was still learning. And she reads my palm. And the only thing I remember from this reading, I don't remember anything else she said. She looks at my palm and she goes, oh, I've never seen anything like this before. And I'm like, oh, well, that can't be good. Lord, leave it to me to have a palm like that. She goes, you've loved, but you've never been loved. And I thought, well, that's really sad. I mean, I've got loving parents and I was married before. And like, what the heck is that all about? So I went on this whole journey I met with a shaman and started doing this self-love journey. And it is in that journey that I became very aware of how much I really didn't like myself. So the love wasn't about anybody else loving me. I didn't love me. So I never spoke kind about myself. I was always down about myself, or I was always, even though I had a very outward personality and, seemed to have, maybe from perception of some people, a decent life and doing it and making it. It's almost like the positive was being negated by my negative self-talk or my negative beliefs or I wasn't good enough, or that'll never happen for me, or, money doesn't grow on trees. There's a lot of really deep-seated belief systems that I had. And, so it's only through my personal experiences that I've had that deep awareness of, I can feel it viscerally now. If I say something negative about myself, I can feel it like somebody just stuck me with a knife, and then I will immediately negate it and I'll say, erase, erase, erase. And then I'll backfill it with something beautiful, So if you're not aware of how that energy affects you and you aren't attuned to it, you may not feel it. And you're just going to say it and it's just no big thing because it's just how you've always been or what you've always done. But once you start to break away from that old aspect of self, you start to become acutely aware of how these things you used to, things you used to do, things you used to say, how you used to act, what you used to do, don't fit anymore. It's you just have to be self-aware. You just have to be self-aware. So I'm always trying to find ways to speak things into being in a very positive manner. Now, am I perfect at it? No. Do I have bad days? Yes. But for the most part, I'm able to catch it. Years ago, when I was in my 20s, one of my favorite teachers of all was Zig Ziglar. And I remember seeing him speak. One of the things he said in his talk was, it's okay to get angry, or it's okay to get upset, or get really frustrated about something. He goes, but set a time limit. Set a time limit on how long you're going to allow yourself to self-deprecate or self-whatever, right? Or be mad or kick things around or throw things or whatever, because I've done all of that. But I always set a time limit. It's like, all right, Lisa, it's noon, right? It's time to move on. So how are we going to get past this little pity pot that we're on, and let's lighten this mood back up, So the old me would have festered and was very much a bullhead, and I know I still have control and bullhead tendencies, but I'm aware of how it's affecting me or my energy or my husband because I'm off, right? And it's to the point now where he'll text me and he'll say, hey, what's going on? I'm like, oh, you can, because he's, he can just feel me, right? So once you start learning how to feel that field, you just feel it. You can feel it on other people. You can feel it on yourself, but it's just self-awareness. And you have to believe what you're saying, right? So it's one thing to just speak it, but it's like the best way when I'm teaching, when I like to tell people is you have to ingest it. You have to eat the cookie of truth. You have to eat that cookie of beauty. You have to eat that cookie of you're fabulous and you're luscious and you're amazing and you're just, come up with some really amazing, awesome words to describe yourself, and then, chew them and ingest them and embody them and just hold that. There are times if I have felt a little off, or I've had maybe a difficult phone call before a client is coming, I have a chakra balancing kit in my office, and I'll go upstairs and I'll do that chakra balancing kit. Or I will listen to music that I know moves me into a balanced space. So I'm always acutely aware of how my energy is, and then, again, it's in the small talk. So when I first sit down with someone, I'll make little pleasant conversations depending on, if I've met you before, and then all of a sudden it's just, I don't know how to describe it other than it just locks in. And it's like, it's on. And then they start showing up, and then I have to sort out who's here, and you have to go, I have, as I teach, you can discern. Everybody knows what a male energy feels like. Everybody knows what a female energy feels like. There have been times where now in the world we live in, people are changing genders, or they're genderless, the non-binaries. So that has been a new experience for me to learn what that feels like. But then once you learn it, it's like, okay, got it. Right? I can feel this, like the shift and the transition in their personality. And I go, oh, okay, you came in this way, but you left this way. For me, in my understanding is when we cross over, we still take those aspects of self with us. We don't lose those parts of us. They come through as the essence that they felt the greatest in. So if they were born a man, but they felt the greatest as an essence of a woman, then they will come through to me, and they'll talk about what happened or why it happened or why they felt more empowered in that way. But it's always from a place of joy, It's not often, although there are spirits, this will take us off on a whole nother tangent, but, the feelings of energies that maybe get stuck or have had more difficult paths of travel, and then their reason for leaving might have been a very, maybe a drug overdose or, a suicide in some way. Those can be a little bit more tender to deal with. But the sexual transitions, to me, the two people that I have had come through from that way, they're just as joy-filled over there as they were living their full truth as that transition person. My belief is as soon as we transition out of the body, we are taken to what I call the spiritual hospital. And it's kind of like going to the hospital here. We get evaluated. Hey, welcome. We have this big welcome party that greets us, but then we go through our process of shedding the old. And I like to tell people it's the best way they show me is they're hooked up to an intravenous line of love, right? So depending on how the person left, they may need to be in that spiritual hospital space for a little longer than maybe someone else. Okay. And then once we leave that spiritual hospital, a lot of times when they come to me, they're sitting in like a garden, or they're around the beautiful pond, and you can see the geese and you can see all this beautiful colors. But other times they're like on their sailboat because that's what they always wanted to do, or they're on the golf course because that's what they loved to do when they lived here, or they're sipping margaritas on the beach because that was their favorite place to be. We go and we can create anything we want. There's zero limitations. And if I've always wanted to go somewhere but never did in life, I can create it over there. So it really is based on the love of whatever that person loved the most or always desired to do the most that we can do. So I don't feel like any two experiences have ever been the same, because everybody creates their own reality up there, just like we're creating our own reality here. One of the things we often say when someone does horrific things is, man, I hope they rot in hell, right? Again, depending on your belief, I don't believe anybody is rotting anywhere, but I do believe we go to the level of, these are very, very, very specialized angelic beings that deal with the souls that will come in. Can you imagine? Okay, now let's go back to that whole planning chart thing, okay? Because I've been to my planning chart. I've been to my book. I've been to the Akashic record. I've seen it. I've been able to make notes in it. I can't change it, but I can just acknowledge what's there. But can you imagine being the soul that says, I'll go. I'm going to be that person that's going to come in, and I'm going to be that one that's going to have that demented mind, and I'm going to shoot up a school, right? Because we're all coming in and choosing a path and choosing to be a part of what is going to shift humanity in some way. Let's just use child abuse as an example. There are lessons to be learned, not only for the soul who has chosen to be the perpetrator, but also for the person who has gone through the experience themselves. And then again, this is all decided before we come in here that these things are going to happen. And I know it's really super hard to wrap your head around that. And still there's days I can't wrap my head around it. But I just say, okay, doesn't compute, but I know when I get there, it'll make more sense, right? So again, I believe there's levels to that heavenly state, but I believe they are appropriately placed. Have you ever seen the movie What Dreams May Come? Highly recommend it, because I believe truly that that's kind of like that self-purgatory state. So there's a point in the movie where they're always going on, they go on rescue missions, trying to bring those souls back that are in that like self-purgatory state, and then but they're never given up on. That's my belief. They're never given up on. They may be in purgatory, of a self-purgatory of some kind, but they're never given up on. So that's kind of like a worst case scenario. And then as the soul begins to evolve, then again, it gets into that spiritual hospital aspect. And it's kind of like, think of it like a rehabilitation center. You break your arm, you got to go in and you got to rehabilitate. So the time it takes is the time it takes. You can't rush it. It's not anything that can, just be like, okay, you're good to go tomorrow, Just depends on what happened, how it happened, and, at what age did it happen. And then, you just kind of have to like break it down from there. Usually in a reading, everybody just, it's not necessarily who you want to hear from, but who you need to hear from that comes through. But if someone asks me for someone specifically, I can go looking for that energy and I can see if they will speak to me. Not all the time will they. And I'm not going to make it fit. I'm not going to make it fit. If it doesn't fit, I will say, I'm sorry, I don't feel that energy right now. That doesn't mean that they don't want to come through. It's just, it's just not connecting for me. But in this instance, it was I don't want to talk about her reading, but it was a situation where I was able to pull him through. And he was kind of sitting on the periphery, and he didn't want to inject himself because he didn't know if it was appropriate based on the manner in which he left. But her invoking him by asking allowed me to find him and be able to bring that energy through. But I will say it's pretty rare that I'm not able to communicate, but it does happen. And I can even sense, because again, having that Baptist background, I can sense or feel when someone had that very strong faith and this is just like off the table for them. And I'll even bring it up. I'll say, in life, they would never have come to see someone like me, or this would never have been something that they would have done. And they're like, oh yeah, that's exactly right. And that acknowledgement draws them closer, but they show me this is who I was, and this is why I'm not just popping in, or I'm not just saying a certain thing. But yeah, it's not often. One of the things that often comes up as I'm expressing the beauty and the love and the amazing energy that they're showing me, and sometimes it moves me to tears, right? And I'm crying with the person, but I'm like, okay, you got to get out, because if I'm bawling, I can't speak. And then they'll say to me, but don't tell them too much, because I don't want them coming before it's their time, right? Because it's like, well, hey, if it's that great over there, why am I staying here? This is a coveted place to come. Earth is a coveted place to come. And to be here is an absolute gift. I know this from the work that I've done with spirit over the years. And so there's lines and lines and lines of people, souls waiting to come here, right? Because this is the place where your soul can elevate the most. And that's the whole name of the game, is just evolving as a soul and getting through every experience that your soul needs. But you get what coming here, it's a fantastic place to just as a soul elevate. On the other side, we have teachers, okay? Just like we have here in school, we have teachers. And so we have a master guide. We have a master teacher that is always going to be with us from our point of view. So they help us discern, okay, these are the things you want to learn in this lifetime. All right, good. We're going to do these things for you. And then, at our planning table, where, we're trying to figure out, okay, these are the things I want to have happen in my life. Who's going to be the perpetrator? Who's going to be the person that's going to do this? Who's going to be the person that's going to break up with me first? Who's going to do all these things that's going to cause me pain? That's going to allow me to either move on to that easy side of life or that hard side of life, not knowing that, where that choice line is. Because again, younger, I didn't know that I had these choices that I could make. It's a choice to come here. It's a choice to come here. Nobody's forced to come here, but we're encouraged, because this is where the greatest lessons are learned. But then you also want to come here because you want to participate. We were talking earlier about how we reincarnate and we come back and we just, we keep helping each other evolve. So that master guide that you work with on the other side comes through with you, and that will be your strongest guide and your master guide clear until the exit point of life. But then as you go through life, there's other guides that come and go. Like the guides I needed when I was 2 aren't the guides I need when I'm 32, and especially they're not the guides I need when I'm 58, But at one point, when I myself was having a hypnosis session, I don't know how this is for anybody else, I'm only speaking for me, I went to a place where I wanted to meet my guides. And they took me through this room into this open space, and it was kind of like a half arc, and there were 27. Yeah, I was like, oh man, I must be a train wreck in this. I'm to have needed 27 guides, but I don't need them all the time, right? but it's throughout life, right? Like some I needed there, some I needed here. And then, the guides that are here with me now need to be a little bit more evolved because I need to evolve, right? But there's always that one guide that's going to be with you from the beginning all the way to the end. And that's the one I encourage everyone to meet, is who is that master guide for you? Who is that higher consciousness for you to be able to communicate? And, if you want to try to keep it straight, you are going to meet people, and there have been many books written on, there's a chemist guide, and there's a this guide, and there's a... Again, I need it simple. I don't complicate things. I go to the main guy and he's my guide. I can't wait to get back, but at the same time, I don't want to get back before I'm supposed to get back, because I don't want to, I don't want to do this again. Like, I'm sure I've said that 100 lifetimes before, right? I don't want to do this again, but inevitably we will continue to do it until we have cycled through and our soul has evolved to the point where now we can go on and we can journey into other places. It's very interesting. We're just energy, right? So we're energy. And a lot of times when I'm teaching classes, I can teach people how to follow a soul out of the body. I've actually done that. I've actually, years ago when I was working in corporate America, there was a woman that I was working with, and she had a friend that was severely sick. And I said, she wanted to leave and go to the hospital. And she's like, and I said, well, I'll keep track and I'll let you know if it's imperative that you need to get out of here. So every so often I would check. And then at one point I was like, oh man, you got to go. You got to go. She's going to be leaving within the hour. And she did. When we leave, though, especially someone that has had an illness, like let's just use hospice for example, someone that's been they're on that final stage. Oftentimes they'll open their eyes, or maybe they'll be talking to people that have gone long before them, and so they're already with us during those final stages, like the last 2 or 3 days. Usually they're coming to us and their presence is with us. And then as soon as we lift out of the body, they're always there. But just because they're there with us doesn't mean that they still can't be with Susie down the street and somebody else in another country that's a cousin or whatever, because we can be all places. We're unlimited beings, which is crazy. Right? It's just crazy to think about. But you absolutely will see those you want to see. And there's going to be surprises because, if you think back, you may have a grandmother that you never met, but you've just been cherished by her, and she's going to be there too, right? And then it gets even more complicated because it's like, okay, but if we live multiple lifetimes, are they showing up as the grandmother I remembered now, or are they showing up as the grandmother from, the 1800s? Or they show up as we most remember them, but we have a cell memory of all of those lifetimes over there.